if you are here because you're hoping to increase your open rates or perhaps increase your click through rates, you are in the right place. As a matter of fact, we're going to cover 10 different ways, 10 ways you may not be aware of that you can increase both of those things and make your email irresistible. So let's take a quick look at the agenda. We are going to talk about words that work like magic in subject lines. We're going to talk about 2 ways to position your message for fast response. We'll cover the ripple effect of the consistency principle, why you'll sell more using social proof when negative can deliver positive results. We're going to talk about how availability bias turns doubters into buyers, what instantly makes you look better than the competition, the one thing to say to increase response, the journalist's secret that boosts email readership, and finally, which days are best for success, which may not be what you're thinking. So those are the things we're going to cover, and I promise you this concludes our read off the slide portion of the presentation. Those are the things we're going to cover, and before we dive into them, there is just one thing that you need to know. And that thing is everyone relies on decision making shortcuts. Everyone relies on decision making shortcuts. So, what is a decision making shortcut? Well, it's an automatic, instinctive, reflexive response. Humans have developed these over the millennia as a way to conserve mental energy because we couldn't possibly weigh every bit of information before making a decision, or we'd never get around to making any. So instead, we've developed these automatic, instinctive, reflexive behaviors, these hardwired behaviors. And what happens is we kind of cruise along through life on autopilot. And when we encounter a certain situation, we just default to these hardwired behaviors, giving them little, if any, thought. And the reason this is so important for us as marketers is behavioral scientists have identified hundreds of these automatic responses that people have, and some of them influence what they read, who they trust, and when they buy. And that's why they're so important to us as email marketers. So, what I'd like to do right now is I'd like to share 10 ways that you can trigger these automatic responses in order to get the increased open rates and increased click through rates that will make your email irresistible. So, hack number one, words that work like magic in subject lines. So, there's been a lot of research that's gone into this. And what behavioral scientists have found is some words are literally more powerful than others. Some words have the ability to leap off the screen and attract your eye like a magnet. In fact, I call them eye magnet words for that very reason. And here's the thing, there's been a lot of research that's gone into this, including in market studies, eye tracking studies, heat mapping studies, and neuroscientists even put people into fMRI machines, flash different words in front of their faces, and look to see what parts of their brains light up. And all of this information, from the most simple to the most sophisticated, proves that some words have the power to attract the eye like a magnet. So at this point, you're probably thinking, well, all right, Nancy, what are the words? I want to use them in my subject lines. Right, you are, and you should. So let's take a look at a few of them. One of them is the word new. As a matter of fact, Copy Blogger lists new as one of the most persuasive words in the English language. In fact, one of the top 5 most persuasive words in the English language. And here's the reason why. Behavioral scientists have found that the human brain craves the new and novel. The human brain craves the new and novel because when we find something that we think is new, it releases dopamine in our brain. And dopamine, among other things, is the feel good chemical. So as a result, when we see something that we think is new, we're flooded with dopamine that feels really good. So we're constantly jonesing for that next hit of dopamine. We're constantly looking for the next new thing because when we think we found it, wow, we get that rush of dopamine. We get that feel good feeling. So anytime you can use the word new or any of the family of new words, new, now, introducing, announcing, finally, soon. If you're looking for a verb, use discover. Don't use learn. Learn sounds like a lot of work. Discover. Well, that sounds like you're going to find something new. Those are all great eye magnet words. Use them in your subject lines. Another great eye magnet word is the word free. Now, you might have heard that, oh, you need to avoid free because it's going to trigger the spam filters. And you are right about 5, 6, maybe 10 years ago. But for the last 5 or 6 years, free has been the top performing subject line word. As a matter of fact, World Data, which analyzes about 4 billion emails every year, has found that free can get you anywhere between a 34 and a 36% increase in your opening rates. Here's the reason why. There's a behavioral economist. His name is Dan Ariely, and he wrote a New York Times best-selling book called Predictably Irrational. And in that book, he devotes an entire chapter to the pulling power of the word free. And what he found was free produces such an emotional charge in us that we far overvalue the free item. If it was even a few cents, if it cost even a few cents, we may not be interested. But if it's free, we have to have it. As a matter of fact, world data found that if you use free in your subject line as opposed to complimentary, now they both mean the same thing, right? If you use free instead of complimentary, you can get twice the number of opens. So free is a really powerful word. Another great word for your subject lines is the name of your target, the name of the person you're targeting. The reason for this is people love their own names. Okay. Experian found that you can get a 29.3% increase in your opening rate if you personalize your subject lines. Social scientists talk about something called the principle of liking. And what they found is people are more interested in and more influenced by things that remind us of ourselves, right? Again, we love our own names. So things that remind us of ourselves, they're the things that influence us. They're the things that interest us. Imagine this: you're at a cocktail party. You're chatting with somebody, right? You're chatting with the person in front of you. And behind you is, well, nothing but background noise until someone behind you mentions your name. And then what happens, right? Your ear perks right up, right? You're like, ooh, suddenly you heard your name. Your eyes work the same way. Your eyes are skimming and scanning. But when your eyes get to your name, your eyes zero right in on it. We are attached to our own names. We love the sound of our own names. We love the look of our own names. So definitely use personalization. And another eye magnet word is the word secrets. In fact, world data finds you can get an 11% lift in your opening rate if you use the word secret or secrets in your subject line. And here's the behavioral science reason why. Social scientists have found that we are actually more persuaded by information that we believe is not widely available. We're more persuaded by information we believe is not widely available. So anytime you can suggest that you have that kind of information, people are going to pay attention. The word secret certainly suggests that. But you can also talk about a sneak peek, a look behind the scenes, an advance look at something. Anytime that you can suggest you've got this information that people aren't going to find everywhere, they're going to listen to you. So, your action item is front load those eye magnet words. Use them at the beginning of your subject line where they're going to do the most good and also have the least likely chance of being cut off. All right, hack number two: two ways to position your message for fast response. So these days, it's not enough just to get a response in email. No, we want to get that response as quickly as possible. And the reason for this is the sooner we get the response, the sooner we can monetize our emails. And it turns out that there are two things that you can do in order to prompt that response. And both of them have to do with the principle of scarcity. So at this point, you might say, well, Nancy, what is the principle of scarcity? Well, social scientists have found that if something is widely available, we may or may not be interested. If we're interested, we take advantage of it. And if we're not, we don't. Pretty simple, right? But just let people know that that's something isn't going to be around all the time. Or it's around, but only certain people can access it, not everybody. And that can change everything. It's like a switch flips in us and it makes us want it and want it badly. And those are the two halves of the scarcity principle. On the one hand, there's urgency, limited time, limited quantity. And on the other hand, there's exclusivity, available to some, but not to all. And the Email Institute finds that if you use the principle of scarcity in your emails, you can get a 22% lift in your opening rate. The bottom line is people want what they can't have. It's that simple. We're all human. That's how we operate. We want the things we can't have. So let's look at a few ways we can use the principle of scarcity in emails. So here we've got a countdown clock. Countdown clocks are a great way to drive urgency because every time one of those seconds rolls by, you know that's time you'll never get back. And the closer that counter gets to 0000 across the board, the more urgency you feel. The more you feel like if you don't act now, you're going to forever lose your opportunity. As a matter of fact, world data finds that countdown clocks in emails can get a 31% increase in click through rates. Now, here's one of my favorite emails. This is the T Swift Daily Deal. We are talking about Taylor Swift's squirrel pajamas. Now, I'm sure you all own a pair of her squirrel pajamas, right? I'm having a little fun here, but I love this because this email oozes urgency. It's the T Swift Daily Deal. And then she says, while supplies last. ends tonight, today only. And she does a great job of changing the question from, do I want a pair of squirrel pajamas, to, can I get a pair of squirrel pajamas before the sale is over? Right? She amps up the urgency. Now, here we've got a nice subject line that drives urgency. It says, I'm holding one of the last 15 seats for you. Please RSVP today. And you think, wow, the seats are going quickly. There's only 15 left. They're holding one for me, but how long are they going to be able to do that? They're going quickly. I better respond now. Now, here we've got an Expedia email, and this embraces both halves of the scarcity principle, urgency and exclusivity. So it says, last chance, there's your urgency, last chance to join Expedia Rewards before the public launch. Now, you might be thinking, well, wait a minute. I'm a person. That makes me part of the public. Can't I join during the public launch? Well, of course you can, but who wants to do that, right? We all want access before other people do, right? We don't want to wait till everyone else can get in, right? The masses. That's not any fun. No, we want to get in first. So it's a nice pairing of the urgency and the exclusivity of the scarcity principle. Now let's look at how we can focus in on exclusivity. Here we have something from the IAPP, the International Association of Privacy Professionals, and they're offering some advanced courses. And they say new credential just for CIPP certified pros. And when you look at that subject line, you realize this isn't going to everybody who's a privacy pro. It's not even going to everyone who's a member of the IAPP. It's specifically limited to people who have a CIPP certification. So you feel special, you feel sought out, you feel exclusive, right? It's a great use of exclusivity. And there's something else interesting going on here with the construction of that subject line. New credential just for. World data finds you can get a 17% increase in your opening rate if you construct your subject lines that way. Just for CIPP certified pros, just for Digimarcon attendees, just for attorneys, whatever it happens to be, just for new customers, just for our email subscribers. But that just for construction can drive your opening rates by up to 17%. Now, here we have something from the Capitol Grill, and they say you're invited to an insider preview, insider perks. And you're like, ooh, okay, not everyone's getting this. In fact, it's an invitation. By definition, there's some exclusivity because if you need an invitation, that means not everybody can get in. So you've got some nice exclusivity going on there. Plus, the word invited or invitation can get you a 25% lift in opening rates, according to new research that's come out of World Data. So a lot of good exclusivity going on there. And finally, here we have, Nancy, you've been granted early access to this offer. And then they talk about member only access. Do not underestimate the psychological appeal of having access that other people don't have, whether it's access to information, access to prices that not everyone else has, whether it's being able to get into something before people do without the wait. People love to have things that other people don't have, right? We all love to hold that over our friends or our colleagues. We have something they don't have. We learned something before they did. We got information or an item before they did. So use that. People respond to it. So your action item is make people feel special or time press, the two halves of the scarcity principle, exclusivity and urgency. All right, the third of our 10 hacks is the ripple effect of the consistency principle. And what behavioral scientists have found is once people make a decision, they like to remain consistent with that decision when future opportunities arise. And they generally do so giving the matter little, if any, thought. So, what does this mean to us as email marketers? It means if we can get someone to say yes once, we're much more likely to get them to say yes a second time, a third time, a fourth time. And this is particularly true if our first ask is relatively small. So once people commit, they remain consistent. And that first small yes can lead to subsequent larger ones, right? We start with a small ask, get that yes, and then we can ask for something a little bit larger and a little bit larger after that. So let's look at a few examples. Here we have something from Semper International, and their subject line says, thanks for your ongoing support. Want to help out again? So in that subject line, they're communicating a lot. They're saying, look, Nancy, you usually say yes. You've said yes in the past. You usually say yes when we ask you. Just say yes again. Don't think about it. And for goodness sake, don't think about this request as if it's coming from someone you've never engaged with before. So they're really trying to trigger that commitment and consistency principle, that automatic yes. Here we have something from Amtrak, the train company, and they say double days are here. Since you've already registered, All you have to do is travel. So earlier, what they did is they sent out an email saying, in the coming months, we're going to run a special promotion, and during a particular time, you'll be able to get double points. However, you need to register now in order to be eligible for those double points when we make them available. So that was their first ask. And it was a small one. You didn't have to spend any money. You didn't have to buy a ticket. You didn't have to plan a trip. You just had to say, yeah, I want to be able to get the double points when they're available. Now they're sending out the email saying, okay, you registered. Now it's time to travel, right? Now all you have to do is travel. So they're increasing their ask and they're trying to get you to be consistent. Obviously, you registered, you were planning on traveling, so start traveling. Here we have something from Delta, and they're selling a 30-day Delta Sky Club membership for just $90. Why do they do that? Obviously, they'd love for you to buy an entire year, right? But they do this because they know that for the people who say yes to that 30-day one, at the end of the 30 days, Delta can go back to them and say, now, how about upgrading to a full year pass? And those are the people who are much more likely to say yes. They said yes to the first small ask. They're much more likely to now say yes to the larger request. And here we have something from a reverse mortgage company. And their subject line says, take this quiz to see if you qualify for a reverse mortgage. So at this stage of the game, you're like, yeah, okay, I think I'll take the quiz, right? You're not committing to getting a reverse mortgage. You're certainly not committing to getting one from this particular company. No, you're just taking the quiz just to see if you even qualify. But once you do that, once you say yes to these guys, you're much more likely to say yes when they email you again, when they have a larger ask. So remember, escalate your asks and remind people of their earlier yes so you can trigger that automatic response. All right, hack number 4, why you'll sell more using social proof. So, what is social proof? Well, behavioral scientists have found that when people are not certain of what to do, when they're uncertain of what decision to make, they look to others, particularly others like themselves, and they follow their lead. So, if we don't know what to do, we look around, we see other people who are doing something, and we go, they must know something I don't. I'm going to do what they're doing. It's probably a safe choice. It's probably a good choice. So, we do what other people do, especially if those people are like us. So, how do we use that in our email marketing? Well, here we have something from Citi, and they say, Nancy, join the growing number of Citi customers who are going paperless. Be the next Citi customer to go paperless. I get this and I go, oh, I never really thought about it. My bill shows up in the mail once a month. I never really give it any thought one way or another, but maybe I should be going paperless. I mean, it seems like a lot of people like me are doing it. Therefore, perhaps I should too. Or here we have something from Villanova Business School, and they say, beat the application rush, apply today. And I think, oh, wow. People like me who are looking to get into a good business school, looks like they're going to be applying to Villanova. I'd better do that too. I should put Villanova on my list and I should apply soon because that looks what everyone else is going to be doing. There's going to be this rush. So I'm going to do what other people are doing. I don't want to miss out. Here we have something from Harvard Business School. They say, what your colleagues are reading now. Discover what your peers are reading. And these days, there's so much content out there. It's virtually impossible to stay on top of everything. But if we could know what our colleagues were reading, if we knew what our peers thought was really good, and we could get in on that, if we could read those same things, we'd be happy, right? We'd want to know, what are they reading? What do they like? I'll just follow their lead. I can't read it all. Maybe they've done the work for me. I'll follow them. Or here we have something from Salvage Sales, and they have 2 hits of social proof. Their subject line says free shipping now. Did you catch those 2 iMagnet words? Free now. Free shipping now on our best selling sale bag. So if it's the best selling sales bag, that means a lot of people are buying it. That's social proof. And then the email itself, they say back in stock. And you're like, oh my gosh, not only was it a bestseller, it sold so well that they wiped out their inventory and they had to get more. This is clearly the one I'm going to get. This is the one everyone else seems to like. This is the one that people are happy with. They're clearly not returning them. They're pleased with them. This is the one that I'm going to get. I'll be happy with it too. So your action item is show your target that others have already done what you want them to do. Because when people aren't sure what to do, they're going to look to others. They'll follow their lead. So show your target that others have already done what you're about to ask them to do. All right, our 5th hack is when negative can deliver positive results. So very often in email marketing and marketing across the board for that matter, what do? We bend over backwards to focus on the positive, right? We always want to be positive. We focus on the gains, the advantages, the benefits, all the wonderful things that will happen if you just do what I'm asking you to do, if you just respond to my email, right? And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. We know that benefits sell. We know that benefits work. However, we also know something else. Behavioral scientists have identified something known as loss aversion. And what they have found is people are actually twice as motivated to avoid the pain of loss as they are to achieve the pleasure of gain. Twice as motivated to avoid the pain of loss as they are to achieve the pleasure of gain. And here we are as marketers focusing entirely on the pleasure of gain. Now, am I telling you to walk away from benefits? No, I'm not. We know that they work. But what I am suggesting is injecting a little well placed loss aversion. Maybe what you want to do is you want to tell people about the pain they'll find themselves in if they don't do what you're asking them to do. Or maybe you want to focus on the pain that they can avoid if they do what you're asking them to do. So use a little bit of well placed loss aversion. Let's look at a few examples. Here we have something from Hewlett Packard. They want me to resubscribe to their e newsletter. So they say, you have no idea what you've missed. Now, they could have said, oh, we've got all this great stuff coming down the pike. We're going to be talking about it really soon. So make sure you subscribe now so you don't, you can get in on it. You don't miss any of it. But no, they look backwards. They say, you have no idea what you've missed. You weren't here. And we had all this other great stuff that we talked about, but you weren't around. We hate to miss out. So that's a very powerful line. Here we have a subject line. It says 7 emails you should never send. And can't you just imagine somebody standing over the copywriter's shoulder and saying, oh, no, 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 that's got to be more positive. That's way too negative. Change it to 7 emails you should always send. And you know what? 7 emails you should always send is a good line, right? People want to know that. If you send emails out, you want to know the 7 you should always send. But what you really want to know is the 7 you should never send because you don't want to screw up the way other people have. You want to make sure that you avoid making those mistakes. Here we have something from a conference, and they say, don't pay an extra $300 for inbound. Now, what do conferences usually do? They say, oh, save, right? Sign up now and save $300 on inbound. And we all love to save. But you know what people like even better than saving? They like not overpaying. They like finding out that they paid the same as the person next to them, that the person next to them didn't pay less for the exact same thing that they bought. So saving is good, but not overpaying is better. So using loss aversion to say don't pay an extra is a very smart thing to do. And here we have why your conversions suck and how to fix it. So that parenthetical statement is very important because if you point out to someone that they're screwing up and they're losing out as a result, right? They're making a mistake and they're losing because of it. They may just throw up their hands and say, I don't know what else to do. I did the best I could and now you're telling me I'm losing out. But if you say, you know what, you're making a mistake and I can help you fix it, people are all ears. They're going to listen to what you have to say. So your action item is help people avoid mistakes. People are twice as motivated to avoid loss as they are to achieve gain. All right, hack number 6 of our 10 hacks. How availability bias turns doubters into buyers. Now, we're in marketing. We know that when we first put our message out there, some people are going to say, love it, love it, love it. Sign me up now. I'm getting this. They're our buyers. But there's a much larger group of people who are on the fence. They're doubters. They're not sure. They're thinking, maybe, yeah, but maybe not. And what we want to do is we want to turn those doubters into buyers. How do we do that? Well, we tap into availability bias. So you may say to me, well, all right, Nancy, but what's availability bias? I'll tell you. Behavioral scientists have found that people will judge the likelihood of an event happening based on how easily they can recall an example. People will judge the likelihood of an event happening based on how easily or how readily they can call to mind a relevant example. So imagine you're someone who never flies. You have never set foot on an airplane. And someone says to you, hey, how safe is it to fly? Well, I don't know. I've never set foot on an airplane, but you would think about the news stories you've heard about airplanes, right? You hear the word airplane, you think about the news stories you've heard. They're the ones that spring to mind right away. And you might think, gee, a lot of those news stories seem to involve pieces of the airplane falling off mid-flight, or they involve crashes, or some of them involve crashes with fatalities. And you might say to yourself, yeah, I don't think it's all that safe to fly. So what does this have to do with email marketing? Well, again, people are going to judge the likelihood of an event happening based on how readily they can recall an example. And in our case, the event is their need for your product or service. So before you ask them to buy, first get them to think of a time in the past when if they had your product or service, it would have really come in handy. Or get them to imagine a time in the future when they could see themselves enjoying it, they can see themselves benefiting from it. It's all about personal relevance. If someone can recall something or if they can imagine something, they come to the conclusion that it's more likely to happen, right? And if it's more likely to happen, that means I'm more likely to be able to actually use this product, therefore I'm going to buy it. Or I'm more likely to be able to use this service, therefore I'm going to sign up for it. So let's look at how we can use availability bias in email marketing. Here's something from Sharper Image, and they are selling a weather alert emergency hand crank radio. Now, I know you guys don't really know me, we've just met, but here's the thing. I'm a big believer in electricity. I'm not much of a hand crank appliance kind of a girl, okay? So normally I wouldn't take a second look at an email like this. However, let me tell you what happened. The night before it arrived in my inbox, I'm watching the evening news. The weather comes on and it's filled with stories about this storm that's blowing through the area and all the different neighborhoods around me that are losing power. It's the last thing I saw before I went to sleep that night. I got up the next morning. Fortunately, we still had power. I'm going through my inbox and I see this. And what happens? I find myself thinking, maybe I do need a weather alert emergency hand crank radio, right? The timing was perfect for availability bias. Let's look at a few more examples. Here we have something from an insurance company, and they are trying to convince dentists to buy disability insurance. Now, the problem with that is if you're healthy, if you're able bodied, you don't think you need disability insurance, right? And it's really hard to convince you otherwise. So they used availability bias and they said, have you heard your colleagues complain about low back pain, carpal tunnel syndrome? And you know what happened? The dentist started thinking, last month when I was at the local ADA meeting, Dr. Smith from across town wasn't there. Somebody said she was laid up in bed with back pain. Wow, this does happen to dentists. It could happen to me. Good use of availability bias. Here we have something from the Boston Globe. And the Boston Globe wanted their subscribers to buy gift subscriptions to bostonglobe.com for people they knew. But they didn't say, hey, buy a gift subscription for someone you know. They didn't even say, don't you know someone who might like a gift subscription? No, instead they said, bostonglobe.com is an incredible gift for your, and then they listed 10 different descriptors. Your avid reader, your political junkie, your sports fan. And what do you think happens when somebody reads that? Well, they call to mind the person they know that fits that description. Maybe their uncle's an avid reader. Maybe their grandfather's a political junkie. Maybe their daughter away at university is a sports fan. The next thing you know, they've come to the conclusion that they know 10 people that might like a bostonglobe.com gift subscription. Or here we've got a lot of availability bias packed into one single subject line. They say, win a Vegas bachelorette bash for four. Who will you take? And right away you think, oh my God, I have six bridesmaids. What am I going to do? Which two do I leave behind? Oh God, no, I can't leave two behind. That would be terrible. They'd find out about it. Well, maybe I can buy two extra tickets or maybe I can talk to the people. You haven't even entered the contest, let alone won it. And already you're there. You're imagining that you've already won it. Great use of availability bias. So your action item is stir people's memories or their imaginations before you ask them to respond. All right, our seventh hack is what instantly makes you look better than the competition. So there was a time when marketers would differentiate themselves based on something known as a USP, a unique selling proposition. And your USP was the thing that made you different from the competition. Problem is these days, it's hard to zero in on a USP because these days, most of our competitors are making products or offering services that are very similar to ours. And they're pricing them very similar to the way we price ours. And of course, everyone has good customer service, right? I mean, when was the last time you heard any marketer say, you'll love our product, our customer service, not so much, but oh, but you'll love our product. Everyone says, oh, we got great customer service. So you can't really hang your hat on that. So what is it that you can do that's going to help you differentiate yourself from the sea of competitors out there? Well, what you can do is you can tap into something known as the authority principle. Ever since we were children, we have been taught to recognize and respect authority. So by the time we're adults, it's ingrained in us. And if an authority says something, we usually believe it. And then if authority asks us to do something, we often do. So people recognize and respect authority. And if the authority happens to be a subject matter expert, so much the better. Because then we think, hey, they've done the legwork for us, right? They've done all the work for us. We can stop putting in effort and we'll just go with what they're talking about. So let's look at a few examples. Here we have something from Land's End, and they say, wear the best squall parka ever. like the weather pros. And then they go on to say that the parka was actually developed with help from the Weather Channel. And when you see that, you think, man, I've seen those weather people outside in all kinds of horrible weather. If they think this parka is good, in fact, if they helped design it, it must be good, right? They're the authorities. We accord them that status. Well, here we have something from MC Perkins Cove, which is a restaurant, and they say Food and Wine's most romantic restaurants in the US has named them to the list. So if you were, looking to take your sweetheart out for a special occasion and you lived in Maine and you wanted a romantic restaurant and you found this, you'd be like, boom, right? I'm done. I don't have to search anymore. I have my answer because Food and Wine would know they're the authorities on the matter. I can just book my reservation there and then get back to everything else I was doing. If you want to position yourself as an authority, your company, your service, you can do something like this. This is a company called Conversion Scientist, and they say they've got the massive 110-point e commerce checklist you've been waiting for. And when you see that, you're like, oh my gosh, if these people have put together a 110-point e commerce checklist, they must be authorities, right? They must know what they're talking about. The other thing about authorities is your target market will sometimes accord authority status to celebrities, to sports stars, to entertainers. Here we have something from Katy Perry. She says, find out Katy Perry's secret to clear skin. Now, Katy Perry's not a cosmetologist, she's not a chemist. But when we see her on camera, on screen, she looks great. Her skin looks good. So we're like, sure, if she thinks this is great skincare, a great skincare product, it probably is. I'm interested in it. So your action item is invoke perceived experts. You want to tap into people that your target market thinks of as experts. And when you can do that, it makes you look different than the competition. All right, hack number 8 of our 10, the one thing to say to increase response. Now, you might say, gee, Nancy, there are a lot of us listening in at this conference. We represent different verticals, different products, different services. We use our emails for different reasons. Some of us are doing retention, some of us are doing acquisition, some of us are doing usage stimulation. Is there really one thing we can all say that's going to increase response? Yes. My answer to you is yes. What you want to do is you want to give the reason why. Behavioral scientists have found that people are more likely to do what you're asking them to if you give them a reason why. People are more likely to do what you ask them to do if you give them a reason why. And Ellen Langer, who was a Harvard University researcher, found that a great way to tee up that reason why is to use the word because. And the reason for this is when people see or hear the word because, they just start to nod up and down like little bobbleheads, right? They just start to agree before they've even processed what comes next. They just assume whatever comes after that word because is going to be a good, legitimate reason. They get to because, they see it, they hear it, and they just start to nod yes. So that's a real power word for us. Let's take a look at how we can use it in our emails. So here we have something from Bath and Body Works. Their subject line says, because you need a candle for every room. And you know how I feel about electricity. You really don't need a candle for every room. But when we see this, we just kind of go along with it. It's like, oh yeah, I should get one for a few other different rooms: the living room, the kitchen, the bedroom, the bathroom. Yeah, why not, right? Or here we have something from 1-800-Flowers, and they say you scored big because site-wide offers are the best kind. Are they? I don't know. Maybe they are. Maybe they're not. I have no idea, but it says they are. I'm getting this now. Why? Oh, because it's a site-wide offer, right? They tell you, and we just go along with it. We don't stop to analyze it. Here I have an example from a headhunter. They wanted to place a candidate with me, but I didn't call them saying we have an opening. In fact, we didn't have an opening, but they blunted that in the very first line of their email. They said, because we expect your organization's always on the lookout for top Oracle professionals. You read that and you just start nodding yes. You just automatically start to agree. Now, you don't have to use the word because. You don't want to sound like a broken record. You don't want to be starting every paragraph with the word because. The important thing is to remember to provide a reason why. So here we've got something again from ProFlowers, and they're saying, Nancy, you're officially running out of time. You only have 3 days left. So in other words, if I want to get my Mother's Day flowers delivered in time for the holiday, I have to place my order quickly. So providing that reason why is really critical. So your action item is legitimize your request with a reason. And the interesting thing is the reason doesn't have to be this ironclad bulletproof reason. You just want to have a reason. It's not like saying, it wasn't like the flower company said, you've got to do it quickly. You've only got 3 days and we're going to give you a $100 discount. It's like, oh, well, that'd be quite a reason. But they weren't giving me a $100 discount. They were just saying, look, you've only got 3 days. So having that reason is what's really important. All right, our ninth hack is the journalist secret that boosts email readership. The journalist secret that boosts email readership. So if any of you happen to go to journalism school like I did, you're probably very familiar with the five W's and the one H. The five W's and the one H are who, what, where, when, why, and how. And in journalism school, one of the first things they teach you is when you're writing your articles, when you're writing your stories, answer those questions because those are the questions people have on their mind. And if they start reading your story and you start quickly providing those answers, you're going to get the eyeballs, right? They're going to keep reading. Turns out that the same thing is true for email marketing. There's a neuroeconomist, his name is George Lowenstein, and he identified something known as information gap theory. And here's what he found. He found that if there's a gap between what you know and what you want to know, you will take action to close that gap. If there's a gap between what you already know and what you hope to know, what you want to know, you will take action to close that gap. Now, we're in email marketing. We want people to take action. So, using the five W's and the one H is a really smart thing to do because it helps us identify gaps in information. It helps us tee up these information gaps. So take a look at a few examples. Here we have who was the best dressed at last night's Oscars? What's better than scoring a bargain? Where to soak in the last days of summer? When is the best time to book your flight? Why is traveling solo more popular than ever? How to write a signature speech. So, who, what, where, when, why, and how. Those will just pull people in because they want to know the answers. Similarly, you could say the best, the worst, the only, three things, five things, the top 10 things. Those are also ways to kind of trigger that notion of an information gap. But your action item is offer to fill an information gap. All right, our 10th and final hack is which days are best for success. And I'm not going to say to you, hey, you should be trying to email on the weekends because people are constantly, looking at their cell phones. Nor am I going to say, don't send emails on Mondays because it's the first day, kind of back to work and people are too busy to entertain your marketing message. There are studies that talk about these things. And in fact, there are a lot of studies out there. Near as I can tell, you need to test your way into it because a lot depends on who the sender is, what kind of an email it is, what your target market is like. There is a company called World Data. I quoted some of their statistics. They actually do publish a best days, worst days calendar that they're constantly updating. So if you go to worlddata.com, you can download a free copy. But my answer for which days are best for success is very different. My answer is holidays and special occasions, special celebrations. And the reason for this is those are days that stand out from all the other days on the calendar, right? There's something known as the von Restorff effect. And it basically means that we notice and we remember things that are different from everything around them. And holidays and special celebrations are those days that are different from all the other days out there, right? Think about Thanksgiving in the US. That's a very different kind of a Thursday than any other Thursday on the calendar that year. So we pay attention to holidays and special celebrations. And the cool thing about holidays is there's like three different tiers to holidays. You've got your top tier holidays, Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, Christmas, Easter, right? The top tier ones. Then you have like a second step down, maybe Valentine's Day or Columbus Day. And then there are these third tier holidays. There is literally something being celebrated almost every day of the year. Sometimes there are several things being celebrated every day of the year. You just have to find out what they are. For example, this past August 6th was International Beer Day. Who knew, right? It's a pretty cool thing to celebrate. And so what you want to do is you want to find the day that's kind of celebrating what it is you want to talk about, or you want to find out what's being celebrated on the day that you're going to be sending out your email and use that to flag people's attention. Use it in the subject line. Before you celebrate International Beer Day, take a look at the sales that we have, or you'll be, toasting on International Beer Day once you've read this new product launch that we're talking about. Whatever it is, those are corny, but you get the idea. If you're itching to send out an email today, you might be happy to know that it's National Princess Day. So if you have a product that adds a little magic to somebody's life, today could be the day to send out that email. Now, you also want to focus on special occasions. What are special occasions? Well, birthdays, anniversaries, those are great special occasions. If you happen to know your customer's birthday, celebrate it. That's so cool. They'll be so happy to hear from you. If you don't, many of us don't, celebrate your own birthday, your company's birthday, the founder's day, right? And give the gift to your customer or to your prospect, like this company is doing, right? It's our 16th birthday. How about a pair of prescription glasses for just $16, right? The customer is getting the gift, even though it's the company's birthday. The other thing you can think about doing is creating your own holiday, right? Put a stake in the ground, create your own holiday. Here's a company called PTI, and they say introducing Orange Tuesday at PTI. 24 hours to save big. And then they say move over Black Friday, move over Cyber Monday. Orange Tuesday has arrived. And I suspect they call it Orange Tuesday because that's their corporate color, but they're putting a stake in the ground. They're creating their own holiday. In this last slide, this last example is one that's near and dear to my heart. You guys are going to love it if your name is Nancy. Happy National Nancy Day, right? If your name is Nancy, you can't resist. But we talked earlier about personalization and subject lines. If that said Happy National Kenneth Day, right? Or Happy National Sunny Day. I mean, people, named Sunny, named Kenneth, named Nancy, in my case. It's like when you see your name, you can't resist. So use those holidays and special occasions. You want to piggyback on an existing holiday or you want to create your own. So we have covered off on 10 masterclass hacks that will make your email irresistible. We've talked about I magnet words and the scarcity principle, consistency principle, social proof, loss aversion. We've also dug into availability bias, the authority principle, the reason why, information gap theory, and the von Restorff effect. You want to use these and you will increase your opening rate and you will increase your click through rate. If anybody is interested in a cheat sheet that recaps a couple of the things we talked about, but adds in a couple of others we didn't have time for, hit me up at that URL, take a screenshot of it, or go to it right now. We'd be happy to send you the free cheat sheet. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. And Kenneth, if people have questions, I am more than happy to answer them.
Is July 14th. Um, Today is also National Vichyssoise Day. So if you want some soup with onions and leeks and potatoes, today's the day. But got some good questions for you from the audience. So and by the way, Nancy, I think of you now as a professional hacker. So in addition to using I magnet words, how can I call attention to my subject line?
Oh, all right, Kenneth, that's a great question. So you want to use those magnet words, which is terrific, but there are other ways. For example, people love suspense. So if you end your subject line with three dots, the ellipses, the winner is dot dot dot. Uh, this just in dot dot dot. Have you seen this new dot dot dot? Those ellipses create suspense, and people like suspense. They get pulled in and they want to know the answer. So using ellipses can actually get a 17% lift in your opening rate, according to world data. The other thing you can do is you can start your subject line with a number. But if you're going to do that, you want to make sure that you use a numeral. You don't want to spell out the number. You want to use a numeral. Some studies actually show that odd numbers do better than even numbers because they're more specific, and specificity equals credibility. Although a study came out of Harvard that said that 10 and multiples of 10 also do very well. And the reason for that is we grew up counting on our fingers, right? So 10 and multiples of 10 are very easy for the
Mhm.
brain to process. And when it's easy for something, for the brain to process something, it feels right. And when something feels right, we just assume it is right. So use a number. You can get a 16% lift in your opening rate if you start your subject line with a number. Another thing you can do is pose a question in your subject line. Questions are engaging, questions are involving, and questions can actually drive a 11% lift in somebody's opening rate for a subject line. And finally, you can consider using emojis. The latest research I've shown suggests that if you bookend with emojis, so if you start and end your subject line, you put it at the beginning and the end of your subject line with an emoji, you can get up to a 31% lift in your opening rate. So I think those are all really good ways, in addition to I magnet words, those are all really good ways to call attention to your subject line. And the reason these things work is as people are scanning their inbox, these things stand out. We're not used to seeing lots and lots of subject lines with question
Mhm.
marks or ellipses or numbers. What we're used to seeing is words, words, words. So anything that's not a word, per the von Restorff effect, gets noticed and remembered. It stands out, calls attention, and that's half the battle, right? If you get someone to pay attention, they're much more likely to open.
Shout out to Hedwig von Restorff. I knew I couldn't get you out of here without at least one von Restorff um, reference. But here's another question I wanted to ask from the audience, and I think this is a great question. How many hacks should you use in an email? Because I could see somebody trying to figure out a way to use all 10 of these.
Good.
It'll
Those would
drive
be
yourself a little bit crazy just trying to figure out how many is too many. Too many.
that would be a very ambitious email marketer.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but I think, I think that probably a good number is anywhere between 1 and 3, and it might depend on how long your email is. So what I like to do is I like to look at my email campaign, because very often you're sending more than one, and I
Mhm.
look, for different places to, apply various, behavior triggers, human behavior hacks here, human behavior triggers. You can't really jam too many of them in, because if you do, it's, it'll seem forced, and your email will get too long, and but sometimes one is enough. Maybe the whole thing is around loss aversion, or the whole thing is around social proof. Sometimes you can put in a couple. Maybe you have an I magnet word in your subject line, and maybe you have some authority principle and some reason why in the body of your email. But I'd say anywhere between 1 and 3. And then if you look at your campaign as a whole, if you have like a 3 email campaign, for example, you would multiply that by 3. So maybe it's somewhere between 3 and 9.
Another question, instinctually, what is your favorite go-to hack?
Ooh, tough one. All right. So I'm going to give you two answers on that. I'm going to say, I like the reason why, using that word because, just because,
Mhm.
uh, you know, it- people just automatically go along with it. And I think sometimes, very often with email marketing, we put the message out there. We assume people get it and they know what they're supposed to do. And we don't have to tell them why, it's like,
Mhm.
come on, it's obvious. But providing that little reason why, kind of closing the loop, actually will get you an increase in response. So I think that's one of my favorites, and it's a very easy thing to do. And then, I think maybe the other one is probably loss aversion, just because of what we know, that people are twice as motivated to avoid those losses, or to avoid the pain of loss. And again, as I was saying, in marketing, we bend over backwards to be positive. Not that there's anything wrong with the benefits, but it's almost like an underused opportunity to pepper in a little bit of loss aversion, because we can get that big boost in engagement.
I call it TP FOMO, toilet paper fear of missing out. So, because that is what the world went through for several months last year. So, here's the last one I'll ask, and I'm going to actually preface this with one of mine. And if you'll let me answer this first, I'll let you go after. If you had time for an 11th hack, what would it be? I will tell you, at least for me, because I loved what you said on when to test out your emails with timing. Um, it was hack number 10. Which days are the best for success? I have come to learn, figure out, don't listen to what anybody else says, figure out what with the exception of the national days, because they still work. But it's figure out what works for your audience. I've worked with some campaigns over the years where Tuesday at 3:47 in the afternoon works, as well as what everybody tells you to do at 6 a.m. on a Monday. So that's my hack, is to test out what works for your audience better than anything else, and then replicate that.
And I think you're absolutely right. I think what people are going to find is, they're going to find what works for them. And it might, maybe it's going to be similar to someone else in their industry. Maybe it's not, maybe it's going to be similar to another e-newsletter. Maybe it's not. So you really should test it. And if I
Well,
were
and
to,
the good news is that if there is good news in this cookieless world with the way things are going with Apple, is that they've made a lot of email marketers rethink how to look at email, because now they're having to start from scratch with a lot of data. Sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead with your 11th hack.
yeah, yeah, no, that was a very important point too. Things are a changing. Yes, I think if I had to add an 11th, I probably would have gone with autonomy bias, which is this deep-seated human desire to
Yeah.
exercise some control over ourselves and our
Yeah.
environment. And an easy way to do that is to offer people choices. And not just buy this, but would you like this one or this one? Or here's our proposal. We have the premium and the basic, and actually using a phrase like, but you are free to choose, or the choice is yours, or it's
Mhm.
up to you, also increases the likelihood that people will make a choice, and do what you want them to do. So particularly coming out of the pandemic, where our choices were so restricted, where people just felt like their lives were turned upside down. They couldn't do all the things that they wanted to do, that they were used to doing, that they used to take for granted. That was all kind of pulled out from under us, and now it's of course slowly coming back. But I think people are even more so looking for choice, looking for autonomy, looking to exert some kind of control. And as marketers, if we offer that to them, uh, that puts us in a really good place. So if we had had time for an 11th, that would have been it.
As you say that now, just makes me think the 12th hack would have been never use the words "we're in this together," um, unprecedented, and everything else. So, Nancy, fantastic presentation as always. Really, really appreciate it, and thank you. And have a great day in Boston.
Thank you very much.